Hi, everyone. So, you went on this fabulous retreat today and you were just hanging out and loving life and eating pizza, and I was there to serve it to you. It's fine. You're welcome. There wasn't a tip jar. But we are going to talk about John F. Kennedy in this video. And it pains me that we have to talk about it in a video. I wish we could talk about it a lot more in class. But so is being a teacher in 2018 and having no time in class. So, John F. Kennedy, we know, is going to burst onto the scene in 1960. And burst onto the scene isn't quite how it goes because we know his family has this lineage of being involved in politics for quite some time, right? And we know that 1960, that year, is going to be the year of the televised debate. And that is huge that he is on TV. And man, does he manipulate it and look quite good and remind America of that future that they want in this new decade of 1960, where we said Richard Nixon is really going to remind people much more of the past and the gray suit and the sweating and the whole thing, as we talked about in class. As you can imagine, just like it is for every single president, the constant focus is going to be, are you tough on communism? So there's lots of campaigning around that issue. And we have to just back up a little bit and think about, okay, John F. Kennedy's family. If you remember, it was his grandfather who had dead people vote for him in Massachusetts. They were very, very motivated to do so. And I kind of think about John F. Kennedy's dad, like the original super intense dance mom. He is just pushing, pushing, pushing his kids. And we are going to talk about this in this video. The Kennedy legacy is one that is just filled with intrigue and tragedy. And there is so much going on, even with just the father, Nazi sympathizing, prohibition, all these dark secrets. And the Kennedy family just seems to be filled with these dark secrets completely. So he comes from privilege, but someone is very similar to him as FDR, who knows privilege, but is going to be so compassionate about the poor. And a lot of what John F. Kennedy is pushing to do when it comes to poverty, when it comes to reform, America's not quite there. Because again, in the early 60s, America's still kind of in the mindset of the 1950s, right? So a lot of his things are not going to be successful. And similar to in Obama recently, a lot of the things that he's pushing for, Congress is not going to go along with him. And remember, Congress is filled with those Dixiecrats, right? Those Southern Democrats who don't want to vote for a lot of these reforms, especially when it comes to race relations. So it's clear that he's cut from a different cloth right off the bat because Martin Luther King is going to be in jail, and he and Bobby orchestrate to get, first of all, a phone call to Coretta Scott King and then getting MLK out of jail on bail. And this is huge. No one has really done this before as a president. Could he have done more? Of course. But as far as a presidential figure taking on civil rights as an issue, this is new for us, right? And people are so excited about John F. Kennedy. I cannot tell you. Frank Sinatra is singing his songs. And by the way, Frank Sinatra later on is dropped by the Kennedy family. He's seen as kind of too uncouth, maybe having some mob ties. And when they're in office, whoosh, it's done. And he always felt terrible about that for the rest of his life. But John F. Kennedy is 43 years old when he becomes president. He is the first Catholic president, and he has Irish lineage. This is huge. This is huge for this generation and what people are going to think in a working class town like Buffalo. Think about it. Your Chicago's, your New York's, your Boston's. People lose their mind that he is president. This, in some ways, is the realization of the immigrant dream for so many people. Even though, again, they have the Kennedy compound on Cape Cod and everything else and Silver Spoon, people think, wow, he's like me. And his attractiveness, his promise, being Catholic, that was radical, that was new, and some great stories from this building. Mrs. Diane Kazmerzak used to teach across the hall from me, and she was somebody who said one day, do you want me to bring in my John F. Kennedy scrapbooks that I had when I was a child? And I said, sure, why not? She brought in books. She brought in books to share, all these clippings of John F. Kennedy. And it's so funny. Mrs. Kazmerzak is like soft-spoken. She used to be a nun, and there's all these pictures of John F. Kennedy, hearts around the whole thing. I said, Diane, wow. She goes, oh, you have no idea the hours we spent, the crushes we had on him. This was huge. And again, you will be hard pressed to find in hamlets of South Buffalo and other places a wall that does not have a picture of John F. Kennedy in people's homes that are Irish and Catholic. Also Polish, Italian. This was enormous, enormous. People were so excited that he is going to be president. So when we talk about his advisors, on average, they are 10 years younger than Eisenhower's. They were nicknamed the best and the brightest, and this is actually going to be an ironic title later because these fabulously educated MIT and Harvard grads are going to walk us right into just the quagmire that is Vietnam. But they were bringing a whole different energy into the White House. So were his kids that are there, right? Oh my gosh, and we haven't even gotten to Jackie. So people are going to be quite excited about this. John F. Kennedy's foreign policy, if you're looking with me here, it has three big events. First of all, the Bay of Pigs invasion. Second of all, the Berlin crisis. And third of all, the blank blank crisis, Cuban Missile Crisis. I knew you had it. While John F. Kennedy is going to inherit some pretty peaceful things at home, situations abroad are going to be tense, and this communism is going to be very real. And Nikita Khrushchev is going to see a young president and think, wow, I can't wait to push him around. And he's going to try to do just that. So even before John F. Kennedy, Eisenhower is going to be sending CIA-trained operatives into Cuba. Because again, Cuba became communist, and Cuba became communist under Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro is going to be their communist dictator who takes over and shoves out Batista. Batista, lots of American operatives, people did not think that this was going to happen. And again, communism is severely appealing to people that are impoverished, right? That you're going to take what the upper class has and you're going to share it along these levels. It seems more equitable, it seems more just to a lot of people. And lots of times wealthy people will underestimate how this will appeal to poorer people. So Batista was pretty out of touch with his island, with his people, never thought this was going to happen. And in the meantime, you have Fidel Castro, who is pretty, dictatorial himself, getting this power, and also very charming to a lot of people. And he has a right-hand man, Che Guevara. And I'm sure you've seen pictures of Che Guevara. He has become the face, the red, the black. I'll show you in class that kind of screen print photo of him, the face of resistance around the world. And if you want more background on Che Guevara and his life, which is really interesting, he was someone who was born wealthy and became radicalized and turned to communism. I really recommend the Motorcycle Diaries, and also you get to look at Gael Garcia Bernal, and that's never a bad thing, right? Never. So Batista is overthrown, and we have to remember when this happens, America is rocked. Cuba is so close to us, number one. Number two, we have always had these coaling stations, and as time has gone on, this has become a place of huge investment. We got lots of liquor and alcohol and rum, especially from them during Prohibition. It was America's tropical Vegas. It was a playground for us. You got to go dancing there and go to casinos. The mafia has a lot of money there. We have resorts. We have, the whole culture of the cocktails and the dancing. People are into it. You would fly there and you would take a date there for the night from Florida. This is a place where America has tons of investment, whether it's sugar plantations, whether it's resorts, whether it's casinos, and now that is all nil. Now that is all gone. Not only does Cuba become communist in 1959, but then in 1960, they actually sign a trade agreement with the USSR. This to us is a slap in the face. And again, as we talked about with that Amy Chua article, your wealthiest Cubans have to go. So people who have the highest level of education often and who are going to have a lot of money have to leave. And we said that's why for Amy Chua to have the theory of gosh, Cuban people are so successful when they come to the United States. Yeah, you took the most educated and almost wealthiest Cubans and brought them to the United States, right? Something to remember when we talk about immigration. But John F. Kennedy now doesn't know what to do. What should you do? He doesn't know if he should make this invasion or not. Should we do something about Cuba or not? And he has advisors on both sides kind of give him mixed opinions. Some are saying, like before, Castro has way more support than we think, and than we had previously thought. I don't recommend it. And other people are holding that company line of we've got to be tough on communism. So he decides that he's going to do it. And it kind of turns into this John Brown-esque thing where we thought we were going to start a revolution and then no one shows up to the party. So first, we're doing it through the CIA. The whole point of doing it through the CIA is so there's no trace to us, right? So nothing can come back to us. Well, first of all, there's a New York Times article on this top secret invasion a week before it happens. That's a bad sign. Second of all, we had planes leave from Nicaragua, so if they were ever found from the air attack, we could say, well, no, they were in Nicaragua, not us. Well, guess what? They have mechanical trouble and they need to land in Key West, Florida. That is terrible. So now we have this boat-to-land invasion, and it does not go as planned. It's going to have CIA operatives. It's going to have some Cubans who were thrown out before. And again, that support from the island is not going to be there, and it is totally botched. We do not win. It is a terrible, terrible result. It utterly fails. Castro looks stronger than ever. Khrushchev is going to try to kick around JFK more than ever, and we look pretty weakened as a country. So then we have the Berlin crisis, and this is going to be from June to August of 1961. We know in Berlin, you have, first of all, in Germany, the four sections, right? France, British, United States, and the USSR. And then Berlin is in the USSR section, and that too is divided into four. So what happened was you had people who were surrounded and kind of trapped as time went on by the USSR. Khrushchev and JFK are going to have a summit, which means, again, the two leaders of a country coming together. And when this happens, Khrushchev is pushing around JFK saying, yeah, get out of Berlin, get out of West Berlin. And JFK says no. So then he says, okay, fine, East Germany will decide what will happen to West Berlin, like almost saying we're going to swallow them. So we wait. All these people have escaped into West Berlin, right? All of these people seeking democracy. You know your country is not really working when you have to build a wall to keep people in. You should maybe change your leadership, change some things up. And we wait to see what Khrushchev will do with troops on the ready. So what happens is John F. Kennedy is going to say is a wall is better than a war. This wall is first going to just be a chain link fence, and then before you know it, that is a huge concrete structure and is 100 miles long. It is completely cutting off West Berlin from the rest of Berlin, from the rest of Germany. And again, this went up between families. People held their babies over so grandparents and relatives could see their children that were born. This is going to go up in 1961, and it is up until 1989. That is so long. People are cut off from family, from schools, from your butcher shop, from your neighborhood, from everything. So many people still try to escape, and when they do, they are shot down. This is absolutely terrible. And when the wall goes up, again, it splits up these cities, and all these different presidents went to visit, and there's an unnamed guest who's going to share with you what John F. Kennedy actually said to a group of people when he was speaking to them in Berlin. He said, "Ich bin ein Berliner," and even though he thought that meant, like, I'm a Berliner, you're a Berliner, we're standing with everybody, actually, it meant, perhaps, she can't do it. She can't do it. It's not working today. She had too much pizza. Berliner in that part of Germany also could mean a jelly donut. So when he said this, was he saying, I am a jelly donut? Kind of, he was.
Sorry, when
Okay, so we have some helpers who have arrived. They're fresh from retreat. They're super relaxed. They're here. Hello. Hi. And we are going to talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis. So guys, this is the closest our country ever gets to what? In the world? Nuclear warfare. You heard that one. Well done, Melanie. Well done. So it's October of 1963. What does Nikita Khrushchev send over closer and closer to Cuba? Missiles! Sam, surface-to-air missiles. We notice them. We're doing lots of spying. They land in Cuba. They're pointed at us. Khrushchev says, no, they're not pointed at us. And he's lying. So how do we react, you guys? This is bad. What do we do? This is tense. What should we do?
Let's see if I remember this from last year.
Go for it.
Do they send? There's like a naval.
There's a naval thing.
Blockade.
There's a naval blockade. Who comes up with the naval blockade?
A guy.
What guy? Bobby Kennedy.
Oh, really? JFK and his brother, Bobby Kennedy.
Yes. And instead of like brinkmanship and massive retaliation, like with Eisenhower, Bobby Kennedy says we can use what?
We can use...
What kind of response? Flexible response. We can use flexible response. If someone's yelling at you, you don't have to always yell back. So this is something that, come on over, Tori. Come on over. This is something that's going to be an amazing, like, new idea, and it's not that revolutionary, that you should do what's best for the situation and not necessarily the thing that they do to you, right? So we're going to learn that from the Cuban Missile Crisis. What else do we learn from the Cuban Missile Crisis?
Integrity.
My Greek chorus.
Integrity.
We always are looking for integrity. We learned that. What else? Since Khrushchev sends a letter in the aftermath with the naval blockade that is blocking Cuba, and they turn around at the last second, and everyone's been like sweating and freaking out because we don't know if we're going to die. What else do we learn? Should we always live like this?
No.
Probably not. So what do we need to do?
Tone it down.
Tone it down. Tone it down. What do we sign? We signed a test ban treaty. Do you remember what it's called?
Melanie, take it away.
Don't know.
We signed the nuclear test ban treaty. And that is going to just say that we really need to not immerse ourselves in this world of anxiety where we could like literally obliterate everyone at any moment. Also, we have the flexible response precedent. And since Khrushchev sent a letter to JFK to resolve this, we probably need better diplomacy and communication. So we set up a
phone call.
We set up a hotline. We set up a hotline where people can talk on the phone and discuss this. So again, everyone breathes a sigh of relief. The naval blockade is in place. They turn around with these missiles at the last second. They don't go into Cuba. And it's brilliant because they would have needed to make the first move, but they do not. Thank goodness, thank goodness, thank goodness. And we know John F. Kennedy isn't just all about the Cold War. He actually starts an amazing program. And people go all over the place. They go to Latin America, they go to Africa, they go to Asia. They're helping with the environment, with education, with healthcare. And these volunteers are all part of something still around today called the Volunteers, Asia, Africa, Latin America. Louder.
Peace Corps.
All right, you guys. Peace Corps. The S is silent, just like some people in this video. Bye.